This is the second part of the story we shared with you a few days ago. And right now, we bring you this part, where this woman revealed that she used to work with Baltasar, but later on, they ended up having a sexual relationship, something that eventually led to her separation from her husband, and later, Baltasar ended up being imprisoned. They say silence is loudest after a storm. For me, that storm had a name: Baltasar. I worked at the National Financial Investigation Agency in Equatorial Guinea. I was one of the best, sharp with numbers, even sharper with secrets. Baltasar was our leader, a man who wore confidence like a tailored suit. To the world, he was a patriot. To those of us inside, he was a magnet, brilliant, dangerous, seductive. And I was one of the 200 women who fell into his orbit. It started as late-night meetings that turned into wine-soaked conversations. His charm was precise, intentional, and when he leaned close to explain some audit trail or shell company, the scent of his cologne blurred my judgment. I thought I was different. I thought he cared not like the others. I was wrong. When the scandal broke, Baltasar exposed for sleeping with over 200 women, many within our own institution, the agency collapsed under the weight of its shame. Investigations turned inward. Files disappeared. Whispers became headlines. And my home? It fell apart too. My husband, stoic and proud, didn't yell. He didn't cry. He simply packed a bag, left the keys on the counter, and disappeared. He never spoke a word. Not one. That silence haunts me more than the scandal. What came next was exile without bars. No one trusted me. Women hated me, men objectified me, and my colleagues avoided me like a virus. I stayed in the house he left me, in a shell of a home, echoing with memories that felt like crimes. But here's the twist no one expected: I didn't crumble. I rebuilt. Slowly. I started digging into the very files Baltasar tried to bury. Offshore accounts, false contracts, bribery trails. I knew where to look. I knew how he moved money, how he manipulated people. So now, while the world remembers me as one of his women, I'm quietly turning the tables. One file at a time. The scandal took my reputation, my marriage, my peace. But it gave me something far more dangerous: purpose. The media didn't just report the Baltasar scandal, they feasted on it. It started with one leak. A blurry photo of Baltasar in a hotel lobby with a woman whose face was mostly turned away. People speculated. Then another photo surfaced, this time clearer. I was in a red dress, laughing, his hand on the small of my back. That image went viral like wildfire in dry brush. Baltasar files trended across Equatorial Guinea and beyond. Headlines exploded. Financial leader or sexual predator. Baltasar's web of women exposed. Inside the NFIA scandal, from spreadsheets to bedsheets. Exclusive, leaked photos of Baltasar with agency staff, including senior analysts. They circled me like vultures. Old photos were dug up from my Facebook, screenshots from Instagram stories where Baltasar and I were at conferences, charity galas, even once on a boat during a staff retreat. One selfie in particular, me and him with champagne glasses clinking, made the front page of an international paper. I didn't even remember taking it. Online, people had opinions. She knew what she was doing. She probably benefited from it. Another homewrecker playing victim. She's just one of 200. Get in line. Some people tried to defend me, saying I was a pawn. Others dissected my body language in photos like amateur forensic analysts. Every image of me with Baltasar became a frame in a public trial. My life became tabloid content, meme fodder, moral debate. I stopped leaving the house. Grocery delivery became my only interaction with the outside world. I deleted all my social media, but screenshots lived on. A journalist even showed up at my gate once. I saw the flash of his camera through the window before I pulled the curtain. But what they didn't realize was that while they were scrolling, I was working. Every image they shared, every post they mocked me in, it fueled me. They gave me the one thing I needed to bring Baltasar down: visibility. With the right pressure and timing, I knew I could turn that public attention into leverage. So I started compiling everything: confidential emails, financial trails, whistleblower statements from other victims. Baltasar made the mistake of thinking I was disposable. He forgot I had been inside his empire, and I was ready to burn it to the ground. Baltasar got arrested that day. I was sitting on the old velvet couch in the house my husband left behind when the news alert flashed across the TV screen. Baltasar arrested in connection to sex scandal and financial misconduct. I dropped my tea. At first, I thought it was fake, another headline trying to milk the scandal. But then came the footage. Real, raw. Baltasar, usually immaculate and composed, now in rumpled clothes, walking into a courthouse surrounded by plainclothes officers. His face said everything: shock, fear, betrayal. I sat there in silence, heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. We'd all known something bigger was coming. You don't run an empire of lies and manipulation without making enemies. But I never imagined he'd actually get arrested. Not him. Baltasar was a ghost when it came to accountability, always slipping through cracks with that perfect smile. The media exploded again. This time, it wasn't just about the women. It was about money, power, influence. Words like embezzlement, abuse of office, and fraud took center stage. The sex scandal had only been the beginning, a thread that, once pulled, unraveled everything. That same week, I was called into the agency. I didn't know what to expect, but deep down, I sensed it wasn't good. And I was right. 3 men in suits. Cold expressions. A folder with my name on it. I don't remember the exact words, but the message was clear: you're being terminated due to professional misconduct and reputational damage to the agency. No trial. No defense. Just a pink slip and a warning to stay quiet. They didn't care that I had been another one of his many victims. To them, I was a liability, a living reminder of how deep the scandal ran inside the agency itself. I walked out with my head spinning. First my husband, now my career. Gone. And all of it tied to a man who seduced power as easily as he seduced people. But deep inside, past the shame and heartbreak, was a strange sense of clarity. I had nothing left tying me to the person I used to be. No title. No ring. No illusion. Baltasar had fallen. The empire had cracked. And I was free, bruised, but free. My husband ran for the divorce, but the day the divorce papers arrived, I didn't even cry. The envelope sat on the table like a loaded gun, silent, heavy, inevitable. He didn't show up. Didn't call. Just signed his name at the bottom of a clean, final goodbye. No explanation. Just done. We had once promised forever, and now it had been reduced to stamped paper slid under my front door by a courier who wouldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't contest it. What was the point? He had already left long before the paperwork came. But that wasn't the part that broke me. What broke me was the world outside those 4 walls, the other judgment, the kind that doesn't come from a courtroom, but from strangers with Wi-Fi and opinions. Social media turned into a war zone. I was tagged in posts by people I didn't even know. Fake accounts spread rumors. Some said I was Baltasar's mistress for years, others claimed I helped him cover up the financial crimes. Photos of me from agency events resurfaced, dissected like crime scenes. She seduced him. She had to be involved. No way she didn't know about the other women. She's no victim, she's part of the rot. I stopped going outside. Even just stepping onto the front porch made my hands shake. I imagined people watching from cars, taking pictures, waiting to catch the woman from the scandal. My once safe home had become a cage. Shame clung to me like humidity. I wore oversized hoodies and avoided windows. I kept the lights off at night. I didn't open the curtains. And the worst part? I started believing some of the things they said. Was I guilty? Maybe not by law, but morally, emotionally. Had I ignored the signs for too long, played too close to fire, let myself be part of something that left a trail of damage? I didn't have the answers. Just silence again. But something shifted in that silence. After weeks of hiding, I started journaling. Writing helped me untangle the mess. I wrote about what happened, about the woman I used to be, and the one I was becoming. Slowly, a fire began to build, not anger, but something sharper, purpose. I wasn't ready to face the world yet. But I was beginning to understand this wasn't the end of my story. I could have stayed in hiding. I could have let the shame swallow me like it did so many others. Because I wasn't the only one. There were dozens of women, brilliant, capable women who had been pulled into Baltasar's orbit and left in ruins. Some left the country. Some changed their names. Some disappeared completely. They were too afraid to speak. Too broken to face the noise. But I was tired of being afraid. One morning, I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked. I was thinner, paler, my eyes held a different kind of weight. But underneath all that damage, there was a spark. I remembered who I used to be before Baltasar. Before the scandal. Before the world tore me apart. And that woman wasn't weak. So I stood up, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. I chose to face the world that turned its back on me. I started small. I created a blog. No names, no details. Just stories, raw, honest reflections of what it felt like to be used, judged, discarded. I didn't try to sound perfect. I wasn't trying to be a saint. I was just real. And surprisingly, people listened. At first it was a few women who messaged me privately, saying, "It was me too." Then others began to comment publicly. The more I spoke, the more their silence cracked. I became a voice not just for myself, but for the others who had been too scared to speak. Interviews followed. Podcasts. A panel discussion on national TV about workplace power abuse. The same media that once crucified me started using words like resilient and brave. I didn't do it for the redemption, I did it because no one else would. I wore my scars openly. I refused to shrink. I looked the cameras in the eye and said, yes, I was one of the women. But I refused to be one of the victims. And something incredible happened. People began to listen differently. Not as scandal-hungry spectators, but as humans. The narrative shifted. Not all of it, of course, there were still trolls, still whispers. But they didn't break me anymore. They fueled me. I turned my pain into power. I helped build a network for women in toxic institutions, offering legal aid and counseling. I gave guest lectures on ethics, consent, and power dynamics in leadership. My voice became a weapon, and this time, it wasn't just heard, it mattered. I didn't rise from the ashes. I walked through the fire and came out forged. Baltasar may have written the first chapters of my downfall. But I wrote the rest, and in those pages, I didn't just survive. Do I regret sleeping with Baltasar? That's a question I've asked myself 100 different ways in the quiet of night. The easy answer, the one people expect, is yes, regret it all. Hate myself for it. Denounce every moment. But the truth? It's more complicated than that. In that moment, I didn't see him as a monster. I saw him as a leader, a man who understood me, who made me feel powerful, visible. He was charismatic, magnetic, dangerous in ways I couldn't see until it was too late. I wasn't some naive girl. I was smart, experienced, respected. And still, I fell for it. So yes, I regret giving him access to the part of me that trusted too easily. I regret believing I was different, that I was more than just another name on his long, hidden list. I regret not walking away when my instincts whispered that something was off. But no, I don't regret the lessons. What happened opened my eyes. It shattered the illusion not just about Baltasar, but about power, loyalty, and the games people play behind polished titles. I've grown in ways I never would have without that fall. I know who I am now. I know how strong I am. And I know I'll never let someone like him near my soul again. So do I regret it? Yes. Because I lost a lot. But I found myself. And that's something no man, not even Baltasar, can take away. Do I plan to remarry again? That question hits different when you've had your heart shattered in more ways than one by a man you loved, and another you trusted. After everything that happened, the scandal, the betrayal, the silence, the divorce, love stopped feeling like something I could afford for a while. I told myself I was done. No more rings. No more promises. No more pretending someone else could carry the weight of who I've become. But I've also learned not to speak in absolutes. I'm not looking. I'm not waiting. But I'm also not bitter. I still believe in love, not the fantasy kind, not the shiny perfect couple on Instagram kind, but the real kind. The kind that sees your cracks and stays anyway. The kind that doesn't need headlines to feel valuable. If that ever finds me again, I'll be open to it. But for now, I'm married to my peace, to my healing, to the strength I had to build from scratch. And honestly, that feels like enough. My family was one of the hardest parts. At first, there was silence, not the kind that comforts, but the kind that crushes. Some didn't know what to say. Others didn't want to be associated with me. My name was everywhere, on news headlines, in social media debates, whispered about in places I had once called safe. I became the shame of the family without anyone ever saying it directly. My mother called the day after the news broke. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked why. Her voice cracked like she was trying to hold back judgment and disappointment in the same breath. She said, "You were smarter than this." And maybe I was. But being smart doesn't always save you from emotional traps. Some of my relatives, the loud, self-righteous ones, completely distanced themselves. They unfollowed me online, stopped inviting me to things, even told their kids not to mention my name. To them, I was the woman who ruined her marriage and slept her way into disgrace. They didn't care about the truth. Just the image. But not all of them turned away. My younger brother showed up at my door one night, no warning, just takeaway food and a blanket. He didn't ask for explanations. He just sat with me. My aunt, the one who's always been the quiet rebel, called and said, "Let them talk. You're still you." That call saved me more than she'll ever know. So did my family accept me? Not all of them. Not at first. Some probably never will. But the ones who mattered most, they came back. Not because I was innocent, but because I was human, because I owned what happened, because I didn't hide. And slowly, that was enough. Why did I change my children's school? Because they started coming home in silence. At first, they didn't say much, just shrugged when I asked how their day went. Then it became clearer. The pauses. The fake smiles. The one-word answers. Until one evening, my youngest broke down in tears after dinner. "Someone said you were on the news. They called you names. They said you slept with a bad man. They said I should be ashamed." I couldn't breathe. That was the moment it hit me. This scandal wasn't just mine anymore. It had spilled over, seeping into their world. My kids, who had nothing to do with Baltasar, with the agency, with any of it, were being punished too. Laughed at. Whispered about. Made to carry a shame that wasn't theirs. The school did nothing. No parent called to apologize. No teacher stepped in. I realized then that staying there meant slowly watching my children shrink under the weight of a world they didn't break. So I pulled them out. It wasn't easy. They cried. They didn't understand. They missed their friends, their teachers, their routine. But I told them the truth in pieces they could carry. That sometimes, being strong means walking away from what hurts, even when you don't want to. That none of this was their fault. That they deserve to feel safe and proud of who they are no matter what the world says about their mother. We found a new school in a quieter part of town. Different uniforms, new faces. Less gossip, more kindness. It wasn't perfect, but it gave them space to be children again, not headlines, not extensions of my pain. Just kids. And for the first time in a long time I saw them smile without flinching. What did Baltasar had but my husband didn't? That's a question I've wrestled with more than I care to admit, and if we're being honest here, I'll answer it the way it really felt. Presence. He saw people. Not just looked at them, really saw them. Listened like every word mattered. Made you feel like the room quieted down when you spoke. My husband, God bless him, loved me in a stable, steady kind of way, but Baltasar made love feel electric. Temporary, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But unforgettable. He carried power like a scent, subtle but heavy. When he touched you, it was like you were his entire focus, even if only for a night. And yes, he was good in bed. He was confident, experienced, and knew exactly what to do with silence, tension, space, how to make you forget your name and question your morals in the same breath. But that kind of passion, it comes with a price. Because men like Baltasar don't give you their soul, they perform. They consume. You feel alive, but it's borrowed fire, and when it's over, you're left burned. My husband gave me loyalty. A life. Safety. Baltasar gave me chaos wrapped in silk sheets. And for a while I confused that chaos for love. Now, I know better. Intensity isn't intimacy. And last doesn't last. When my husband found out I'd slept with Baltasar, I expected a storm, yelling, accusations, questions, something, but he didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam a door or throw blame like a weapon. He just looked at me. And in that look was every emotion I couldn't bear: disappointment, disbelief, heartbreak, and a kind of quiet devastation that no words could soften. He didn't need to argue. Because for him, the damage was already done. The trust, the foundation of everything we had built, had cracked so deep there was no patching it. He wasn't a dramatic man. He didn't believe in making scenes. And maybe he knew that no explanation from me would change what had happened. So instead of yelling, he packed a bag. He left behind his cologne in the bathroom and a pair of shoes by the door. Little reminders that this was once a home we shared and now it was just mine. In his silence, he said everything. And maybe that hurt more than any fight ever could. Because at least when someone fights, it means there's still something left to save. He didn't fight. He walked. If my husband asked me to return, I think about that sometimes, what I'd say if he showed up at my door, looking at me the way he used to, before everything shattered. There's a part of me, the part that still remembers Sunday mornings in bed and the way he used to say my name like a promise, that aches for that simplicity. That safety. But we are not the same people anymore. He left without a word, and I broke something sacred. Even if love still lingers in some quiet corner of our hearts, the version of us that existed is gone. So would I take him back? Not blindly. Not out of guilt or loneliness. If he came to me with honesty, with understanding not just for what I did, but for the silence he left me in, and if we could sit face to face, without pretending it didn't all happen. Maybe. But not because I need him. Because I've rebuilt myself. I faced the storm. I've become someone new, stronger, more whole. If he could love this version of me, not the woman I used to be, then maybe we'd have a chance. But if he just wants to go back to before, the answer is no. I'm not her anymore. And I'll never shrink to fit into her shadow again.